Hey everybody, welcome back to Universe X, and today we're actually going to do a meta forecast once Set 17 Ultimate Squad drops. So we just got a ban list, and a lot of people have been talking about it. It just caused a whole lot of buzz, chatter, whatever you want to call it, a whole lot of ire, some praise, but everybody's got something to say about this ban list, and it's very, very loud. So I want to take this into consideration and talk about how I think the meta should shape up, at least coming off the rip of this set releasing, because that happens in less than a month. So with that being said, I want to get some stuff out of the way. The breast text, like if you like the content or you get to the end of the video and you think you want to see more, how about you go down there, like the video, press the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and comment so I can get your thoughts on here and be able to talk just about all of these things. Pick your brain after you guys have seen my own thoughts. I don't even know why I'm wearing my headphones right now. So yeah, that is the main focus of the video. Now, if you haven't already, I would suggest you go to the official Facebook group and follow that page, because that's where you're gonna get official announcements and spoilers, much like this ban list. Then on top of that, you've got the unofficial discussion group, the unofficial Reddit, as well as the Universe X Discord, where conversation goes down on the reg. And on the Discord, not just even about this game. We talk about anime, we talk about other video games, we talk about plenty of things. So with that being said, let's hop into what you guys came here for. Every color, I think, has a place next format. It's going to be, while not like, oh, anything can top, I think it's going to be very open in terms of what colors you see represented. Now, this isn't going to come to anybody's shock, but the top dog going into next format, I do truly believe will be U7 Goku. Fact of the matter is, I have very strong opinions about that deck. I think it's very linear. I think it's prone to RNG because of the milling, and what I mean by that is not, oh, well, you won't see your secret rare, because yeah, you can pick it back up. You can pick back a super combo if you get your secret rare, but what I mean is that you could side in 3 cards, mill 1 or 2 of them, never see the third, and be like, wow, it's like almost never sided cards in, period. The deck is just, I think it's not broken, but it's incredibly overtuned. What it can do for 1 energy is wild, whether that be a massive counterplay that's a thick body, whether that be a Android 17, a Frieza, the ability to play well into the 3-cost Unison package, and now that being its only real route, now that we've seen Piccolo Jr. kind of fall to the wayside. That's a very, very powerful. Jiren plus Videl plus counterplay Goku equals your opponent's secret rares being mised off the field before they can even turn sideways. That's a huge, huge, huge point. When it also comes into play, when it comes to the 4-drops, between Vegeta's secret rare and Ultra Mastery, they have some of the best 4-drops in the game currently in terms of power. So U7 Goku will not only be one of the strongest decks, but it is also currently the most popular deck. And just by sheer numbers, it is the most represented deck. People love Goku, people love UI, and so it's just very, very, very popular. So yeah, that one is going to be a competitive mainstay, and likely to be not only the most represented deck, but also in terms of generic power, the most powerful deck. Now, because it is so linear, if we ever see strategies that just blow through U7 Goku, those are going to be viable rogue picks. Like, I'll talk about U7 Gohan a little later, just as a little added bonus for you guys that love that deck. But there are some decks that have a very, 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 very flexible and good matchup with U7 Goku that would be able to feed off of a format depending on the surrounding format. So let's go over. The next one I want to talk about is the GT Trio. While not as outwardly powerful as U7, GT Trio still has a lot of legs. The 8-drop is very, 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 very powerful. On top of that, the GT Spaceship is another hand of battle cards that you can play from, which is very powerful on its own. The ability to go into things like Hyper Evolution for free is a very, very, very powerful play, especially when you're going to be able to boost it and then proceed to just blow your opponent out with whatever cards you have in hand. The deck has legs. Now, for a 1-for-1 cost, are the cards as good as they are in U7 Goku? Not really, but your boss does come down on 3 energy, whereas U7 Goku's bosses have to come down on 1 or 4 energy. making it so that you can kind of beat them to the punch. And by that, I mean, I know that like you have to have an X amount of energy to play the 8 drop, but the point is playing it on 3 energy when you have 4 means you can keep that 1 energy out for a violent raise or something close to that, something that can protect you. Whereas Goku, if they're already awakened, which they probably did on 3 when they popped their unison, has to wait till turn 5. They don't want to end up tapped out with the potential of being destroyed if they get their plays countered and then crack back on. So that's a huge thing on its own. I do think that GT has legs. However, GT has some very, very weird roguish counters in the form of Finn. Finn can come down and take your spaceship, drop all the cards underneath it out, and then your carefully built up hand is now nothing. So if you play against Finn, you wouldn't be able to ramp up the way you do with those cards because there's a chance that Finn can just take it away, and by chance, I mean it's going to happen. Luckily, while Finn is the hard counter to GT, the hard counter to Finn is playing any deck that's above tier 2. And that actually like really kind of makes Finn less of a boogeyman for the GT deck. That's pretty much that. So we're going to move on to Blue, right? Blue has 2, I think, powerful contenders for next set and a slew of rogues for the next, upcoming set. One of the mainstays, I think, is going to be SS4 Vegeta. I don't necessarily think that this deck is going to be the best, but I think that it's a deck that it has the fan favoritism on its side. Certain decks are going to be able to combo a little bit better. Red Sands have things like Imposing Presence that's going to make it hell on earth for this deck to get damage through. Opposing blue decks will have the combo power needed to hurt this deck. It's kind of a weird position because I definitely feel like SS4 Vegeta may see some success, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the end-all be-all of blue. But it will still have success. It's still going to go in, and it's still going to just be able to be played, and people like playing SS4. It's one of their go-to blue decks when Soul Striker is not the first option, and guess what? It's not right now. That's going to open up blue a lot, but we'll get to that later in kind of the rogue section. Next, I think Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 will creep their way into the meta. The deck is incredibly spongy. It is able to play what I feel to be a very nice tempo game. You can go long. You have access to things like Turning the Tide. The Cell will keep the board very, very managed every single turn you want to use it. And on top of that, you have things like the androids, the 3 drops that play from energy, but you also have the 4 drop dual color android and the unison that is absolutely snapped, that every other turn essentially can be a dual attack 25k. These cards allow you to play a very aggressive low game, but also have a very nice mid to late game as blue tends to. And this means that when you can swish hit, your opponent always has to guess which angle you're coming from, and you can pivot on a dime. You can press them down to 4 life, realize that you need to protect yourself, fall back on blue's normal laurels, and then switch up to your late game with other blue late cards. So I think that Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 should have legs in this format and should play nice against a lot of the decks that come out. Next, we're going to go over to green, right? Green has the Expert Cell deck, and that's nothing to scoff at on its own. Expert Cell is very, very powerful. It has a whole lot of filter. Being green, it can sink more or less into its hand destruction game. Now, the core is a little thick. The core is super, super, super thick, and that kind of is not a problem when the core is strong enough, but if the format gets too wide, this deck will be incredibly matchup dependent because of how hard it is to side with the deck. That being said, access to powerful hand destruction, access to, like in the form of the old cell, access to the free playing of very large cells, great synergy with things like the Cell Xeno Leader. You're able to put in a lot of hand control. There's a whole lot of things you can do with the deck. There's a whole lot of destruction. So it's good. It's good. I don't think it's going to be necessarily like the top of tier 1, but I also feel like because it's a expert deck, a lot of people will be able to buy 2 of them, barely get anything else, and make the deck, which is really going to allow it to be very much so playable to the general populace. And so it's going to have that, again, public favoritism. Now, moving forward from that, you got Cooler from Ultimate Squad. The deck is serious. 1-drop, 20k double strike beaters that can bottom or drop a card from your opponent's hand. The ability to use things that green normally use, like Ribrianne, Cell's Earthshattering Kamehameha. You got Champa Destroys. You got plenty of cards that you can use. You have Unison Beatdown, and Unisons don't interact the same way that battle cards do. So a lot of cards that would stop battle cards in their tracks don't necessarily work against Unisons. The deck has excellent filter because it'll draw once per turn when a Unison goes, and you want to get Unisons off the field and on the field to use your Empower. I was about to say empower your Empower, which is weird, but you get the gist. The leader does a lot. And furthermore, it has the Dark Broly-esque effect on the back where you can, discard a Unison, gain 5k. And that actually works on your Unisons or your leader. So that's actually pretty funny because offensively you can use it on your Unison, but you can use it defensively and offensively on your leader. It's a very, very strong play. Now past that, you've got the Frieza Unison, the Golden Frieza, which will on defense blow up your opponent's entire field and provide itself with a blocker with so many counters that they're probably not removing it except through effect, and there's only a few cards that do that. And last but not least, you've also got the ability to dormant behind that blocker. So negate Frieza, add a blocker to the field, dormant, block with Frieza if you need to. They only got one more swing left, and that is what we call ignorant. So that's actually a huge point that should be looked towards. Cooler, I think, is actually the better deck out of the two. Cooler and Cell. I really do think that it's Cooler, but only time will tell. Now, when we go to yellow, right, we are looking at Trunks and Vegeta because that is the de facto generic yellow deck. There's just no way around it. If you like Icarus, then you can transition to Trunks and Vegeta, and it's not the same because Icarus only had a 4-card engine and then a bunch of yellow good stuff plus just blatant free +2s per turn. Trunks and Vegeta has a much thicker core that +1s, but it still cycles through cards, and so you have to play a little tighter. You can't just throw out all of your responses because you may not have sequential just cycles of them over and over again, but it's still a very good deck. This is going to be followed by, I think, Piccolo. Piccolo may seem a little boring to people because it's not doing anything flashing over the top, but Piccolo has a very solid amount of cycling and destruction with critical pressure as well. This is going to allow it to do very consistent, strong plays. This deck has the ability to apply a lot of critical pressure. You're going to be going through your cards a lot. You're never really sitting here wondering where your cards are in Piccolo because almost everything is completely searchable. Whether you're unabsorbing, whether you're assimilating, even your super combo can be searched out. So yeah, it's a vibe, and the leader does nice things, allows you to be union absorbing from under him using the materials. So there's a whole lot of stuff you can do with the deck, and it's just consistent good stuff. Plus Yellow's engine, and Yellow's engine happens to be fairly defensive. So the moment you can get Yellow's engine on board, you just need to worry about the deck being offensive. That's why Trunks and Vegeta work, because they were able to put the punch in the deck. Piccolo can also put the punch in the deck, so we'll see how that one pans out. But I think it'll be a solid choice. Also, it's a fan favorite. People have really wanted a good Namekian deck. People really like Piccolo, and he hasn't had a lot of shine, so I really do think that this one being a Piccolo deck that's actually playable will factor into it being used. Next, we got Sin Shinron, but I don't really count Sin Shinron as a yellow deck. I count Sin Shinron as a Sin Shinron deck. Most of the Sin Shinron deck is Sin Shinron. And just one more time, for emphasis, I'm going to say it again. Sin Shinron. So, yeah, it's going to do what it does. It has the ability to play a very aggressive game if it wants to, has the ability to play mid-range, has the ability to play long control. It's a switch hitter, and therefore, once again, it will always be hard to tell where it's going until it wants to go there. That's just pretty much that. They didn't really hit it, but then again, you can't hit Sin Shinron without hitting Sin Shinron. And it's not doing enough to be sitting here getting destroyed like the other ones is. Like, don't get me wrong, it's very strong, but they printed out a whole cycle of Realm of the Gods cards to deal with the 9-drop. Multiple decks have the ability to hurt it in bad ways. And then the worst part of all, this deck has multiple hits around it in this format. U7 single-handedly can keep a Sin Shinron in check. Realm of the Gods is removing a whole bunch of stuff, including the SCR if they choose to play the blocker one. You have the Jiren and Videl combo, which is going to get rid of 30Ks the moment they come to the board. You will put this deck on lock, and the ability to side into the Vegito Unison of Might is going to be destructive. That's how I would lock down Sin Shinron when I played Gohan. You would remove their board, keep pressure on them, and then you just slam down Vegito Unison of Might and -2, and they couldn't play. Off of a clear board, they just could not play. So that's a thing. But then on top of that, when you get into this upcoming format, it's going to get worse because Cooler has an amazing matchup versus Sin. You were able to pin down their board so often because you have two charismatics in the deck. You have Salza and you have Charismatic. So you're able to blow up their fields before they can even build them up. And that on its own is just wild. That combined with Frieza being able to negate and blow up everything means that that's wild too. And it's a Unison, not a battle card. So you can't negate it with the 9-drop. So essentially, you can tap 6 and swing on me, but if you tap 6, you don't have Cooler energy up. And if you don't have Cooler energy up, I'm playing my Frieza and I'm nuking your entire field, and then we are back to square one. Except you probably tapped out or left yourself with 1 energy. I played 3 and I can still play my turn. This is the issue. So that is a huge thing. And also a blocker revenge isn't going to do anything to a Unison really. So we have a whole lot of things that kind of work in weird ways there. On top of that, if you want to add in a third deck that could be Hazardous of Sin, Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 will play Cell. Cell has Deflect, and Cell has a come into play auto, meaning that yes, he will be blanked by the 9-drop Sin, but he's going to bottom deck everything. And that's a huge thing. When you bottom deck an entire field instead of destroying it, yeah, I don't know who needs to hear this, but that sucks. By the time you get to turn 6, you may not even have the correct grave to really make a turn 6 play viable, and if you don't do that, then you're going to lose the late game to a blue deck. So Sin is going to be strong, but Sin has a whole lot of natural counters. It's going to be rough. Going into black, we're going to talk about Dark Broly. Dark Broly still had gas, but now you're moving into a slower format. And a slower format will allow these tap on 30Ks to put in even more work than they already were, and they already were. Now this deck is going to lose things like thwarting at 4, but that gives it more space to play certain other cards. You could look at the vanilla deck list that Chris from TCGMetalZ just did with me. We have it up on the channel. It was actually yesterday's video. That deck is going to allow you to play a vanilla package and really start beating down your opponent. And the only thing that deck lost from this ban list was legitimately thwarting at 4. You just play it at 1. You still run 4 beyond all limits because it's a 30K and it's going to recycle thwarting. The deck is still juice. Do not sleep on Dark Broly because I think it actually becomes the premier black deck after this set. Now, you also have Xeno Trunks, which is not going to be as aggressive as Dark Broly, but previously the whole thing was you play Xeno Trunks, but black as a mid-range is kind of weird. The format could be a lot faster than Trunks was ready for in some cases, and if you were going to play aggro Trunks, why wouldn't you play Gogeta Xeno instead? Well, okay, Gogeta Xeno is gone. The format should be a little slower, so Xeno Trunks naturally should actually be able to breathe a little bit easier. And now that it can breathe a little easier, you have to not ignore that the deck is great at filtering, has built-in removal as long as you have a Unison, and is very consistent. Has a mini topo as well that only costs 1, so you can't necessarily just be crowned out of your mind. So all in all, this is actually a really good space for Xeno Trunks, I think, and I think it's going to give players a chance to experiment with the deck a lot more. Now when we get to Rogue, there is so much. I will first and foremost put it out here, there's a couple things that are going to be very matchup dependent. Like U7 Gohan. If the room is 70% U7 Goku, U7 Gohan should actually be able to have a positive record and top that tournament. If you know how to play the matchup is very, 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 very good because you're both playing red. you're both negging each other's boards between Yamchas, between Videls, but U7 Goku doesn't really combo high that well. And Gohan can add 25 combo power onto cards like that while cantripping all the things they used. So you get to a point where almost anytime you want damage to go through, it's going to go through. If they don't negate the attack, that damage is going to go through, which puts them in a weird position. Also, because you're both using Vegetas and testing the ops and things like that, you get into a very, very weird position where on turn 4, neither of you guys wants to really tap on turn 4. And by neither of you guys, I mean it's more Goku, because if they play a Vegeta and they want to go swing, you have your Frieza Unison, you have like so many cards. Like my list, I could test me up. I could Imposing Presence for the free. I could normal and then, you know, draw my cards and then get my, you know, skillless challengers off and draw more cards and super combos. And I even ran Universe 7 United. So there was a lot of ways that I can combo sky high, even tapped out at 4. But U7 Goku, tapped out at 4 with not killing you, is a sitting duck, which pushes them into turn 5. And if you can keep your board and start swinging and pressuring them, they don't ever want to tap out of fear of you cracking back, you living and then cracking back. So it becomes a very precarious place for them to be in, and U7 Goku pilots that space very, very well. For people that have been testing against my Gohan deck, like, people can vouch. Like, it is not a good matchup. Now you have another roguish deck, which would be Dripku, the yellow unison-based Goku coming out in Ultimate Squad. This deck has inherent weaknesses that Cooler does not have. One, because the Cooler leader was written better, but two, Demigra Unison of Sorcery is a monstrous chain starter on turn 1 and turn 2 that cannot be focused for the kill. In Dripku, if you really want to, you can send attacks at their Unison until the Unison's dead on turn 1 and 2, and then start swinging, and you break their Empower chain. Cooler has Demigra, and so no matter where you swing the attacks, the Unison stays with its markers, and I'm taking life, making it so that as a Cooler leader, I'm going to be closer to Awakening, and you cannot stop my first Empower, which means you're going to have a hard time stopping any of my other ones. This is a huge difference between the two. However, Cooler specializes in battle card destruction. So if Cooler became 80% of the field somehow, which I don't think it will, but if it did, Dripku is the only other deck right now that can fight in that same space. Oh, you have 4 destructions per turn between your turn and my turn? Cool. I'm not using battle cards, so we need to swing out these Unisons like real men and get it in. So that could be a scene. Now when it comes to Blue, Blue has a couple of them. Super Saiyan 3, Bojack, Soul Striker itself. Blue is such a spongy color that it really depends on how the format is, because a blue knowledgeable player will be able to pile a lot of stuff. I also forgot to mention King Cold. That's not really in the rogue tier, because King Cold will probably actually be straight up in green's meta. If you want to play King Cold, you can play King Cold. Green players know the deck has legs, and you're going to be getting some tools in this upcoming set that'll help you do that too. So yeah, last but not least, when it comes to multicolor, we're going to talk about Invoker. Invoker is still in a weird position. Yes, Android 17 got eroded, and that was a nerf. But that really just took the deck from tier 0 to tier 1.5 to tier 1. And we know in this game, you can play a tier 1.5 deck and know what you're doing and still wax. So now, essentially, think about it as you having anywhere between 6 to 8 Vegetas. The only difference is you don't need to keep a battle card on the board to use U7, the Android. However, if you don't have a battle card on board, you can't use your leader ability, but that could be, you could just play a card and then use it on your turn. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really matter. The point is, A17 will still be a usable card. It just won't be ignorantly, rambunctiously broken. So Invoker can still probably get some wins, especially in a format that doesn't have half the aggro that it used to. So, with that being said, that is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a little bit long, but I did want to kind of jump in and discuss where this set could go in terms of meta. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I will talk to you guys the next time you decide to join Universe X. And if you want to see me in other places, I've got UniX DB, where I play Dragon Ball related games, and as well as UniX Mag, where I go over anything I feel like, music, where I go over anything I feel like when it comes to manga, anime, or the games that spawn from those forms of media. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.